So just this weekend, I did a podcast. Well, it's my friend's podcast, and we were talking about free speech. So in preparation for this podcast, one of the things I read was this essay on liberty by John Stuart Mill. So I thought I would take the opportunity, this video, to talk about some of his key points, maybe so you guys don't have to read the full thing, and also maybe talk about some of the ideas, what I thought of them. First thing he says, he's quite adamant about this, is that we shouldn't trespass on an individual's liberty unless their actions are impacting adversely other people. Like if they're not hurting other people, don't interfere with the individual. Let them think what they want to think, express themselves, and conduct their own experiments in living. He's all for this kind of diversity of people's experiments in living, of their speech, their ideas, and he gives reasons why we give free speech this kind of value. One of the things he says is that nobody has an infallible hold on the truth. Like as we look throughout history, we can see that we've been wrong many times in the past, and it's quite certain that today we're not completely right either. So it's worth giving other people that chance to express themselves, because they could be the ones who are correct and we can learn from them, right? And if you really want to see who we should respect as an authority, who do we respect as a person who most likely has more of a hold on the truth, it's that person who's open to criticism, has really thought about his or her ideas. We can really trust that person, because if there was a truth somewhere else that we are not privy to, it's likely that this individual has considered that truth and has reflected on the criticism thrown at them, right? So that's kind of the value of an open mind, open to criticism. And I really love this point, right? What else? It's not just that ideas are necessarily true or false. It's also that often the ideas that we take to be true today are only partial truths. This is another beautiful point, I thought. So as we look throughout history, what we often do is we just completely reject an old idea and we just substitute it with a new one. An idea that is more kind of wanted or needed for our times today. But maybe it's not the case that what we have today is the full truth, right? So, for example, during the Enlightenment, we had we invested so much importance in science, progress, technology, reasoning, rationality, all this stuff. But then we have like a complete shift where we have the Romantic kind of period where now we're like Rousseau, right? What he said about simplicity of living, kind of maybe there's a more of a value in living in nature, the beauty of nature, simple living away from bureaucracies and industrialization, all the pollution and stuff. And then maybe we go from that, we go back into progress. Like we keep vacillating between what we think are opposite truths, but actually these opposites should be synthesized into a more complete picture. And he talks about how our reasoning, our minds these days are not so capacious as to entertain these, what we think are conflicting ideas. Whereas actually the truth probably resides somewhere in between, right? It's like when we I always think of like Hegel's thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. But it's like we never move into the synthesis stage. And this is something I think also is that the mark of an enlightened mind, an open mind, is when you're able to handle paradoxes, seeming contradictions, because it's quite likely that the truth exists somewhere in between them, or in the synthesis of them, right? One word I encountered recently I really love is syncretism. So it's like my faith is a syncretic faith, because I think all religions, all ideologies, all perspectives have something to offer, and the truth is somewhere in the midst of them, or including all of them in some regard. I don't think you ever have to just endorse one ideology completely, right? I'm getting a bit sidetracked. Let's go on to his other points. Truths are often partial truths we hold. What else? He says we do value progress, but we've stopped valuing individuality. And this is an important distinction in today's time, because we have an example in China where apparently they're making a lot of progress there. It turns out that when the government is strong, it does play a bigger role in society, then more shit gets done. Like it's harder to pass laws or whatever or get shit done in the Americas, right? But it's like, at what cost? So this is something worth thinking about these days. He quotes some other guy named Humboldt in saying, Wilhelm Humboldt, in saying that it's not just freedom we need to develop individuality, but also a diversity of situations. This also struck out to me because often we don't even see what we're capable of because we've never encountered the situations that would elicit our better natures or even other possibilities dormant within us, right? So it's like we want to enable people to conduct different experiments in living, right? Like if someone wants to go into nature, get away from industrial society, like city life. They want to get away from the urbanization. They should be able to conduct that experiment in living. Someone wants to try out this religion, this other faith system, be an atheist, whatever they want to do. Let's make that happen, right? So that's a good point. He goes into education. I thought he made some interesting points there. He said that the state does need to enforce that everyone receives an education, because we should make use of all the experience of the past and learn from it, right? But what should not be the case is that the state is the only one providing that education, because we do want a diversity of opinions, of thoughts, right? So the way he proposes is that the state does offer these tests or examinations for kids, but they're tested only on science, facts, stuff like languages, things you learn, where it's not kind of debatable, these ideas, right? Like, don't test kids on ideas. Let that be kind of up to, I guess, the whims of the caregiver, the parents, whatever. The school should just test them on knowledge, okay? Positive sciences. So I think I can get behind that, because I also read Schopenhauer a while back, who also argued that kids should just be taught sciences, let them get their own experiences in life, and then let them come to their own ideas. It's like, we don't need to implant them with all these ideas right off the bat, which is not what John Stuart Mill says, because Mill thinks parents should be free to teach their kids religion. So I'm a bit unsure about all this. I wonder what you guys think. Maybe you guys can write it in the comments below. I'm leaning towards, let's just teach kids science, math, let them interact with nature, build stuff, and then let them come to their own kind of ideas based on this. And then later on we can give them an education and ideas like philosophy, stuff like that. We don't need to indoctrinate them from childhood. But this is just my perspective on things. His last little section of his essay on liberty is a section where he deals with the government interfering in areas where they're not necessarily trespassing on your liberty, but we don't want the government to take on too many functions, because that puts the government in a better situation to exploit us, to use their power over us, right? So let's say things like community projects, like philanthropy or stuff. This is stuff we can handle as a people, and the more functions we give to the government, it's like we lose some of our power, you know? And another example is, he gives the example of America. It's like, even if the bureaucracy went away, the government went away, it's likely that in America the people could take care of themselves, right? You don't want to give these abilities away to the government and then not be able to look after yourself. So he thinks one of the values in keeping certain functions amidst the people and not the government is that it trains us to be more self-sufficient, kind of, to not need the government so much. And I think this is a very relevant point today, because it seems like the more we deal with social justice, the more we want to just give away our functions, things we've taken care of in the past amidst ourselves. We want to give it away to the government. And we give the government more and more power, and we lose our power to take care of shit ourselves, right? And I'm not arguing for like an honor culture again, or like be tough, be dangerous, or like take care of shit yourself necessarily. It's just, I think the community can take care of it through, okay, let me actually seg into something I've been thinking about recently. It's that I think we're missing an institution in society. Like, we have the court system, which provides a good kind of counterpower to the government, right? It's one of the kind of branches of government that's there. We've got, but we're missing an institution for culture, I think. It's like we've let culture get hijacked by interest groups, companies trying to make profits. And I think in the past the church used to play this role, and I don't want to give it to the church either, this role, right? But I think we almost need like a secular church. It's like, even, let's say I even need scientific knowledge to govern my life. It's like, let's say I want to know the truth about climate change, about should I drink milk or not. It's like, are genders really equal? Or are the sexes equal, sorry, should I say. They say gender is constructed. But it's like, where do I go to for the truth on these matters when even academia is being corrupted by these interest groups and like what makes money, right? It's like even the research keeps flip-flopping. It's like one day they're telling you milk causes osteoporosis and shit, don't drink it, be vegan. And then the next day you go somewhere else and they're telling you milk is so good for your bones, it provides calcium. It's like, who do I trust, right? So I feel like we need a non-fungible institution, a non-corruptible one, which might not even be possible. Right? It's like, which institution can be non-corruptible? But at least an institution less likely to be corrupted, which can kind of give us enough knowledge, maybe even uphold certain values in society without necessarily having to give those functions to the government, right? It's like, keep some of the power with the people, but let the people also be able to take charge of their own affairs. So yeah, I think an institution is missing, just my own perspective on all this. Also, in preparation for the podcast, it got me thinking about when can we restrain or restrict free speech? Like, for example, with hate speech. Like, sure, maybe we want to uphold the value of free speech, but then what if there's real injury, real harm being done to people today? So I was reading some law journals. One of the articles I encountered was in 1992, the Cornell Review, about the empathic fallacy. This fallacy talks about how we give too much power, almost like importance to speech as a way to counter emotions, or I'm not sure how exactly they put it, but the idea is that we think good speech can counter bad speech, which might not necessarily be the case. And if it's not the case, then we have a bunch of minority groups suffering harm today, right now, and they don't have recourse for it because they're just supposed to wait for the good speech to counter the bad speech? I mean, the harm is being done right now. So this might be an instance where we might want to restrict free speech. And to give an example of how the harm is being done, let's say you're a parent and you have a kid, and you're a Muslim parent, taking the kid to school, and the kid sees a sign somewhere that says, no Muslims allowed, right? Or there was a case in history where it's like, you have signs saying, no Jews or dogs allowed. Like, how can you really bring up a kid in this kind of a society? So, and bringing it back to John Stuart Mill's point about free speech being necessary for us to get to the full truth of things, okay, but it's like, does hate speech really let us get to the truth of the matter, right? What does it do for the exposition of truth? On the other hand, it's like, while it's not doing much to get us to the truth, we need to outweigh that with the harm being done on a moral level or on the level of social order, social interest. It's like, what if we're sacrificing the order in society, the morality in society, just so that we might get to the truth? It's like, which holds more value, right? And especially in Canada, we hold diversity and multiculturalism almost on par with free speech, it seems. So it's like, maybe there are times to restrict free speech. Another example is, let's say the government is releasing propaganda, like let's say in the Rwandan genocide, the radio stations are saying that, let's say, the Tutsis are cockroaches or whatever. Like, that leads to real violence, you know? And is it really the case that a private voice, a private interest can be heard on equal level as the government releasing propaganda? Or let's say a strong interest group dominating, having a monopoly on discourse and ideas in society? Can the small voices be heard? So maybe there's an opportunity there to kind of level the playing field, make sure certain voices get heard while others are being heard. Because this idea of the marketplace of ideas, let's say in America that we hold so dear, maybe it's not something we want to let flourish so much, because the voices that are being heard are the ones that make money, the interest groups, and the good voices that we need to hear, maybe the less polarizing ones, are not being heard. It's like the media is so good at just giving you these polarizing views, and it just creates chaos in society, whereas maybe the truth is not so polarizing. It's like maybe both sides have some hold on the truth, like John Stuart Mill points out, but what the media wants to do to make money is just create discord, create chaos, conflicting opinions, because that creates a tension and stuff, right? So yeah, hopefully you guys got some ideas that he talks about, some of my ideas about free speech, or at least things I've been thinking about. So yeah, thanks.